Today is the 4th of July, a day that represents independence for Americans. But in the world of Dragon Ball, Bardock the Father of Goku stood up against Frieza in a TV special and died in the process. But what if all of the Saiyans rebelled against Frieza? Is there a way that they could possibly win? Well, in this video today, let's analyze 3 possible ways that the Saiyans could have rebelled against Frieza and what the outcomes could have been. So, the first situation would be a scenario that my friend Tony T came up with. This would be a situation in which all of the Saiyans under King Vegeta's rule would have a secret assignment in which all of them would scatter throughout the universe in groups attacking Frieza's forces. And instead of facing Frieza directly, they would work in units to take away Frieza's empire one planet at a time. And because they would split up, Frieza couldn't take them all out at once. So in this scenario, the Saiyans don't necessarily defeat Frieza, but they manage to survive by splitting up and using hit-and-run espionage tactics on Frieza's empire itself. But there are 2 problems associated with this: communication and power. Starting off with communications, we have to mention the Scouters. Similar to Frieza and his men, Saiyans did not have the ability to sense ki without Scouters, as Vegeta did not figure out how to do this until the Namek arc. And as we saw back in the Saiyan arc, Frieza could detect what Vegeta and Nappa were up to by spying on their Scouters. And due to the level of control that Frieza has in place, he could easily retaliate by sending forces to combat the Saiyans themselves. And let's say the Saiyans managed to ditch their Scouters and decided not to use them, it would make communication astronomically harder to get around because of how connected they were to Frieza and his men. Now, moving on to power, if we go by the TV special edition of Bardock the Father of Goku, it makes even less sense how the Saiyans could have defeated Frieza in terms of power. A long time ago, Black and Fist, Bean from Bebop Nation, and myself made a video on are Saiyans overrated in terms of power. And one of the main points that we came to a consensus on is that Saiyans like Goku, Vegeta, and the hybrid Saiyans overrate how strong the average Saiyan actually is because of how much potential those individual characters have. And when you look at how high of a rank Nappa was in terms of power, along with how strong Vegeta was as a kid, both of those characters don't sniff how strong some of Frieza's best men were so long ago. And Vegeta didn't surpass Zarbon and Dodoria and Kui until he was much older with a Zenkai boost. So if you really think about this, it really shows you how strong the other Saiyans were in comparison. And let's look at another power scenario. If we look at Bardock as another exceptionally powerful Saiyan at the time, look at how easily Dodoria managed to take him out. And what's more important is that Frieza's goons managed to easily defeat Bardock's entire team of low-class Saiyans that were said to be improving. So the point I'm getting at here is that the strongest Saiyans can't top Frieza or his men, and the much weaker Saiyans would be ants compared to Frieza's top forces. One top Frieza Force member like Zarbon would give the Saiyans a ton of trouble with the lack of communication, and their rebellion would be short-lived. They would be slowly hunted down in smaller groups, and Frieza and his men could still take them out even if the Saiyans didn't have Scouters, based on how much control and how much Frieza's empire was aware of the universe. Now let's move on to the second scenario. Let's take a look at an idea based on a fanfiction segment. Dragon Ball Multiverse came up with an idea in a unique story in which Bardock could see the future, Bardock defeated King Vegeta, Bardock didn't kill King Vegeta, and Bardock became the King of Saiyans and organized a rebellion against Frieza. And for the rebellion itself, what happened is that all of the Saiyans created artificial moons like what Vegeta did back on Earth and attacked Frieza and all of his men before Frieza had a chance to transform. Now, if we ignore the canonical elements such as Broly being around, along with Cooler also being in the mix, along with also having a guaranteed future as Bardock can see, how would the actual rebellion plan work on its own 2 feet if we take out all of the other extra things that the multiverse story had? Well, in terms of realism, the fanfiction story had a character named Hanasia who was strong enough to hold her own against Dodoria and give the Saiyans enough time to attack after breaking the shield of Frieza's ship. Since we are going with the TV special and Hanasia doesn't exist, this means that there really aren't any Saiyans who would be strong enough to hold their own against Dodoria or Zarbon, looking at how badly Bardock was wounded with one Dodoria blast. And based on the technology of Frieza's men, Frieza would know to transform as soon as he and his men could sense the spike in power of the Saiyans in their Ozaru forms. And to put the icing on the cake, the problem with this plan of rebellion compared to the first one is that a lot of Saiyans would be gathered for this Ozaru attack, so if it failed, which is what would happen, the whole planet would be decimated by Frieza since all of the Saiyans would be together, making this plan fail for all of them at once. And let's be honest here, a 10 times multiplier for weaker Saiyans is not enough to topple Frieza even in his base form, even if they fought in a group. Especially when you factor in how few Saiyans would even be able to top some of Frieza's best guys with an Ozaru transformation. Bardock, King Vegeta, Nappa, and maybe Kid Vegeta could do it from the Saiyans that we know, and I'm just talking about Frieza's top henchmen, not Frieza himself. So from what I'm getting at here, this plan would fail too. However, there is a third plan of rebellion that is so silly to talk about that you're probably going to get a good laugh at this. In a ridiculously super duper hypothetical scenario that makes absolutely no sense, if the entire population of planet Vegeta magically learned how to turn into a Super Saiyan as a group, they may be able to take Frieza out in his base form, or shall I say his restricted form, as his original form is actually his final form, but that's not the problem. The problem is that we are basing all of these rebellions strictly off of Frieza not transforming and being caught off guard while he's being killed. And that literally is the entire hope of the entire Saiyan race, to beat Frieza before he transforms. And since no one could go Super Saiyan at this time, and since the absolute best you could do is push Frieza to transform, there's no hope for the Saiyans to even have a chance of succeeding in this. But I should say this, in an alternate way, the first rebellion that I mentioned with the Saiyans traveling in groups and going to other planets attacking Frieza's empire, that might not work in defeating Frieza and his top henchmen, but it could potentially succeed in keeping the Saiyan race alive if all of the Saiyans split up and travel together throughout the universe. But at that point, you're pretty much just evading and annoying Frieza as a rebel instead of actually rebelling and defeating him directly. So ultimately guys, there you have it. I sat down and thought of all of the possible ways in both realistic and unrealistic ways that could stop Frieza, and there's absolutely none. However, the best part of these videos is that the comment section is an extension of the topic. Can you think of a way that the Saiyans could have stopped Frieza and gained independence? Please say so in the comment section below as to what possible ideas you have on the subject itself, or other ways you find it impossible to stop Frieza and more. So with everything else said, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. And remember, as I always say, to have a great day guys, and have a happy 4th of July.